Welcome to The Village, a podcast focusing on the students, staff, and community members that make Village Elementary unique. We are your hosts today. I am Bryson.
I am Chris.
I'm John Wesley.
And I'm Mrs. Evans.
Today we will be introducing Habit 5 of the 7 Habits of Happy Kids, or as some may call it, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
These habits are not just good for our age to learn about. These are things that people of all ages can work on every day to make the most out of their lives.
Our Eagle Leaders have been studying these habits all year long, and our podcast have covered the first 4 already. Habit number 1, be proactive. Habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. Habit number 3, put first things first. And habit number 4, think win-win.
If you haven't had the chance, be sure to go to thevillage.usd253.net to listen to those past episodes and much more.
Habit 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. This habit can definitely be challenging. It means that you should listen before you talk.
It also means that you should look people in the eyes when they are talking, listen to others without interrupting them.
In addition to listening, it is also important to feel confident in speaking, sharing your ideas, and voicing your opinions even if you are scared or nervous.
That is why one of the most important parts of this habit is listening to other people's ideas and feelings and seeing their side of the story or their point of view. It won't be scary to share your feelings or thoughts to someone if you know they are going to listen to what you have to say.
It is okay to disagree with someone or have a different opinion with them, but it is very important to listen to them, to what they have to say, and try to understand where they are coming from. We all have different lives. We can learn a lot of things from other people with different lives if we take the time to listen.
The extra challenge is that we not only have to listen with our ears, we also have to listen with our eyes and our hearts. This might seem crazy to you at first. You might be thinking, how do you listen with your eyes and heart? But I promise it is easier than you think.
You might not know that only a small part of what people communicate is with the words they use. 2 people can say the exact same thing, but depending on how they say it, it can mean 2 very different things.
For example, if I say hello, my message is very different than if I say hello.
You can't see us right now, but to understand people, you have to listen to the tone of their voice and use your eyes to watch their body language. The second time John Wesley said hello, he looked down and slumped shoulders and looked very sad. Even though he said the exact same word, this message is very different.
So you have to hear what people say and see how they say it, but finally you have to use your heart to have empathy, kindness, and understanding of where they are coming from to really understand them.
We have invited a very special guest on today to talk to us more about this habit.
She definitely knows a lot about listening because she has been teaching for a long time. And I would know because she listens to me at home too. Please welcome my mom, Mrs. Navarro. Mom, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm so excited to be joining you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Ms. Navarro, how long have you been teaching?
I am actually in my 22nd year of teaching right now.
What is your favorite thing about being a teacher?
So, as a teacher, I love teaching first grade. I love teaching my students to learn how to read. But most importantly, I also want to teach my students how to be good humans. So that can be being kind, showing empathy to others, working hard, not being scared to try new things, and just knowing that when they try their best, and even if they make a mistake, it's okay because nobody's perfect.
Where did you start teaching?
So I have actually been teaching at Village for my entire career. I actually did my internship here at Village, and then I was hired on that following year.
How long did it take you to become a teacher?
So I got my bachelor's degree at Emporia State, and it took me 4 years to get that. And then just a few years ago, I actually got my master's degree.
What made you decide you wanted to be a teacher?
I've always really enjoyed being with kids, and that's probably my favorite part of teaching is being with the kids every day.
When you were a kid, did you pretend like playing teacher or something with other kids?
It's funny you ask me that. Actually, no, I did not play teacher at home as a kid. I did a lot of babysitting. I worked at my local church and worked with kids. I also helped with Bible school in the summer, but I never actually played teacher at home.
How do you think students can practice Habit 5?
Well, I think the biggest thing I think of when I think of Habit 5 is, seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think at recess, that's a time when students really struggle with this. And so as a teacher, when there's a problem at recess time, I usually try to talk to both kids that are involved with the situation. So I'm hearing both sides of the story, and then we try to come up with a resolution. And by doing that, I feel like we are able to solve the problem more effectively, and it prevents other problems happening later down the road.
What's your favorite school subject to teach?
I really enjoy teaching kids how to read.
What was your favorite subject as a kid?
I actually probably enjoyed math more growing up.
How do you use Habit 5 when you're working or out of school, or how do you use it anywhere?
So I think, I use it obviously as a teacher, but also in my home life, in listening to my own children, listening when my kids aren't getting along, making sure I'm hearing both sides of the story, because sometimes it's real easy to jump to conclusions, and then when you actually take the time to listen, you realize there's a lot more going on than what you were aware of. So I think using it with my family. I also feel like I need to use it with my coworkers, because sometimes I may have an idea about something and I need to hear their perspective to see where they're coming from so we can come up with the best solution or the best plan of action.
So after all those years of teaching, how important do you think it is to listen?
I think listening is very important. Like I said earlier, I think it's real easy to jump to conclusions. It's also really easy to be too busy that you're not really seeing the full picture. So by stopping and giving your full attention to that person in order to see their body language, in order to pay attention to their tone of voice and what they're trying to communicate to you, it helps you be a better listener, helps them feel valued and that they're important.
How do you think students can practice this habit?
So I like for my students to practice this at recess, like I mentioned earlier. I always encourage my students to try to resolve their problems first together, and if that is not successful, then come see me so we can try and talk it out together. I think also during instructional time, when we're sitting in small group or whole group, they really need to be listening to each other, because sometimes we have our ideas, and by listening to others, we can get a new perspective and learn new information.
Is there a time where you've used this without conflict stuff?
I think just if you're asking me about in the classroom, I think when students are sharing information when we're learning and they give their idea, especially like in math, when they're solving a problem. Math has so many different ways you can come to the solution of the problem. And so I think a lot of kids will have their idea and then they kind of tune out. So I like to let different students show a variety of ways to solve the problem, so that way maybe they'll learn a new way or a new strategy that they could try the next time.
Is there a way without conflict out of school that you've seen?
Yeah, I think just in everyday conversation, whether it's with your friends, maybe you've gone out to dinner with some friends, just giving that full attention to the people you're around so that way they know that you are really hearing them and you value what they have to say.
When did you first hear of the 7 habits of happy kids?
Actually, this was something new to me this school year when you guys began studying it. So I've really enjoyed when my Eagle leaders have been coming back and sharing the information with our classroom.
I have something to add real quick. When you were talking about listening, and I think it applies to what Chris was saying too, we talked in our Eagle Leader meeting, there's different types of listening. So there's types of listening where you're pretending to listen. So maybe you're in the classroom and you're sitting there and being quiet, but you're not really listening. And then there's listening where you are listening for how you're going to respond. I have a really bad habit of that. When I'm engaging in conversation with a coworker or something, I'm thinking, what am I going to say next, and not necessarily taking the time to listen to what they have to say. So Chris, I think that kind of goes with what you're saying about how you can use it when it's not just for when there's conflict and trying to learn other people, there's just everyday listening, and it can even help with your academics also, because if you take the time to understand what your teacher's teaching you first, then you're going to be better off in the long run.
Oh, I agree 100%. It makes me think about when we learn through being teachers, we talk about being active listeners. So yes, if you're being an active listener, you're engaged with the conversation and not necessarily thinking about what you're going to say next. And I do have to agree because I'm guilty of that too.
Oh, me too, for sure.
And like when you're listening, not just instruction in school, but like everywhere, like for games, maybe at Boys and Girls Club, and even at like Silver Dollar City. Like, you have to listen to the instructions, otherwise you won't know how the ride works.
Yeah.
Very good. That's a great example.
Did you first start teaching, or did you have a different job?
When I graduated, my first job was being a teacher, but before I was done with my schooling, yes, I did have other jobs.
What jobs were they?
So while I was in college, I actually worked at the Child Development Center on campus. And so again, I was working with young children, but they were children under the age of 5. Most of the time I worked with toddlers.
What was your favorite job you had?
Oh, I love being a classroom teacher.
Did you ever want to teach a different grade than first?
So there was a time span for 7 years where I actually worked with kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and there was 1 year I got to work with some third grade students. I was an instructional strategist during that time, and I'm really glad that I took the time to do that. It gave me more time to be with my own kids at home because I was part-time, but it also opened my eyes up to see the connections between different grade levels. So yes, I was very glad I took that position for a while.
What was your very first job?
Well, my parents owned a hardware store growing up, and so I started working at a very young age in my parents' hardware store, and so I did all kinds of jobs when I was helping at the store.
How does Bryson use this habit at home?
You can plead the fifth if you want to.
I don't.
I think we use it a lot more than we think.
Yes.
Just because it's a lot about listening, and I think that's what makes sense for kids to kind of how to understand. But a lot of it is when you meet someone new, you have to learn about who they are as a person, you know. And I think this habit really speaks to me about trying to understand other people's feelings and their culture, their family life might be different than yours. So I think just getting to know people use this every day, and if we just take a second to really think about it, then we're applying it more than just we would normally. So, and maybe somebody says something and you're like, why would you think that? But then you learn about, oh, well, they think that because that's what their parents taught them and that's what they do at home. So it is different than me. So I think we use it every day, whether we realize it or not.
I also think it really helps us develop empathy for others as well by really building those relationships so we do know where they're coming from, and empathy is so important.
All right, well, I don't think anyone else has asked it, but I always like to ask if you could give one piece of advice, whether it's about the habit or not, to our listeners, what would that be?
I just hope that you guys take away how important it is to listen to others, because it really is crucial in developing relationships with others. and letting others know that you care about them. And we want people to know that we care about them, and we want people to care about us. So I think that's probably the biggest piece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me today. This has been fun.